you know what, since I'm already here, I'll record another video about the special interests. Oh my gosh, there's so many mushrooms. It's really damp here. I am visiting with my husband's aunt in New Hampshire right now, and we are at a beautiful lake house, and I have walked away so that people aren't overhearing me talking to my phone about these things. So, here we are. I am autistic, and it took a long time for me to figure that out. I started to suspect it myself in my mid-20s because of those like tests, like how autistic are you tests that they used to do, and I came up like really high, and I was like, oh, isn't that silly, you know? And like it's a process of discovery that a lot of adults who were not diagnosed as children do go through, as I've discovered looking at support groups online. There's a huge number of adults who are still not diagnosed but know that they are on the spectrum or pursue diagnosis themselves later in their lives. It was very interesting for me to find out that my parents actually considered having me tested for it. I did not realize that. I knew that they suspected there was something a little different about me because as a child I was extremely withdrawn and I was often in my own little world. I didn't seem very connected with reality. I could just be daydreaming, you know, all day long. And I think there were some other areas where I was very awkward. And so they actually had been, and they had told me before they were considering testing me for something. I did not know that it was specifically they were thinking about autism, which in the mid-80s for a girl is pretty amazing, really. And this last time that I saw them, they said that it was actually, they spoke with my teacher about it. I was 8 at that time, and she discouraged them from pursuing testing. She said at that age that probably there wasn't anything that was going to really benefit me from it, and like, yeah, so I didn't get tested. I didn't get diagnosed at that time, and I don't know how I feel about that. Like, maybe that was a good thing, because knowing myself, I may have put, even subconsciously, put limitations on what I could accomplish if I had known that I had a disability, and instead I have always pushed myself extremely hard and not given myself any outs. Which, I don't know, other autistic people get mad when I say that, so that's a very unpopular opinion, because they're like, you know, diagnosis is always good, you get the right supports, you know what you're dealing with, and that's true. So I don't know, but just knowing my own personality, I'm okay with not having known until later in life. It does explain some things, like especially my sensory aversions. I have a very difficult time with sensory input, and I have all of my life been extremely sensitive to sensory input. So the textures of things, foods, really had a hard time eating as a child because I was very scared of food and the way that it interacted, you know, the way it feels in your mouth was terrifying. I couldn't touch certain fabrics of clothing because it was just awful. You know, the fingernails on the chalkboard effect, I get that with a lot of things. And I pick at my flesh when I'm in distress, and I have different, what they call stims like that. And I have these special interests, which is the real thing that that made me want to make a video about it for this channel, because I did not realize how my obsessiveness was related to autism until somewhat recently, just being connected with other autistic adults in support groups and finding out that the special interests that autistic people are really known for is not just like you have one all-consuming obsessive interest and it lasts your whole life. The way that I experience it is also common, which is a cycle. So I have a handful of special interests, sometimes a new one comes in, and I get extremely all-consumed with one at a time, and then it will just suddenly stop, and I'll have zero interest in it at all, cannot force myself to care, it'll just be gone. and another one will come along and take its place. And then usually the original one will come back at some point. So it's I've learned to kind of ride the wave. It used to frustrate me a lot because it leads to a lack of consistency in everything in my life, and it's frustrating to me, and it's embarrassing. Like, my husband thinks it's cute, and he always recognizes when I'm falling into a new obsession, but I feel embarrassed by it, and I try to like hide and minimize just how interested I'm getting in something. I don't know why. I just do. Because I'm like, I know it's not going to last, and it's so frustrating. And sometimes the obsessions come on so heavy that it hurts. It feels like my brain is on fire. I can't think about anything else. I'm consuming constant content about whatever that one thing is, and I can't focus on anything else. I can't care about anything else, and it feels like my brain is burning. And I have managed to kind of even myself out a little bit so that that is pretty rare now. I don't usually have an obsession that burns that bright and quickly, but I want more consistency in my life, especially around my faith practice. I want to keep up with the Hindu practices that I take on, and I'm not sure how to do that. So I'm trying with doing the kind of ISKCON deity worship with my children, because it's a nice thing that we can do together. We can make crafts for Krishna, we can wake Krishna up and get him dressed, and they love doing that. And I'm frankly kind of terrified because I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with it. If my interest in it just suddenly stops, will I be able to force myself to keep doing it for the sake of doing it? And I hope so. That is my goal right now. But I don't know. It's really pretty scary. And I'm practicing kind of putting some of my obsessions on a low burn instead of just stopping them cold. Like, my long hair is also one of my autistic special interests. It's knee length right now. And a lot of times I've gone through cycles in my life with it where I'll be like, why do I need long hair? I don't need it this long. This is silly. And I'll cut it to shoulder or something. And then my obsession with long hair will return, and I'll regret it, and I'll be growing it out again. And it's just this cycle that goes over and over and over again because hair takes a very long time to grow. So I'm not actively in my obsession with long hair right now, but I am keeping it long. I'm keeping it at knee length, maybe letting it grow longer because I'm lazy. And it's not any trouble, so I'm experimenting with hanging on to it for when that desire for long hair comes back. And I may try to do that with my Hindu rituals as well, because right now I'm making videos on this channel. I'm actively really doing more with Hinduism than I have been in a couple of years, and I want to keep that going. So I want to find a way to not just burn through it and stop when the obsessive part fades. So yeah, it doesn't, I'm always Hindu. I always will be Hindu. There is absolutely nothing else that makes sense to me. It's a very important part of my life, regardless of whether it's an active special interest, active obsession or not. But that's why you'll see me disappear for periods of time, because I'll be in a different active obsession. And that is part of having autism for me. So, I'm always trying to be careful not to use autism as an excuse for something, but it's a fact, and I have learned that it's not worth trying to fight it. You have to kind of roll with the way that it works in your life. I spent my 20s trying to fight it, and it was just impossible and frustrating and difficult, and it just made me miserable. In my 30s, I just accepted myself a lot more as I am, and so I'm just trying to learn strategies to kind of balance it in my life and keep up with the things that I want to, even when I'm obsessing over something. So yeah, that's honestly a little, excuse me, a little behind the scenes of what my life is like, what I'm like. And, you know, obviously people are always like, oh, you don't seem autistic, but I could go through a list for you. It is quite extensive of all of the autistic traits that I have. It's quite obvious once you know what you're looking for. So anyway, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about it, any ideas you have about how I can kind of ride that wave but stay consistent and not lose my focus on other things when I fall into an obsession. Oh, looks like my in-laws just arrived for the morning, so I should probably go.